Welcome to Figure Eight, where we feature inspiring stories of women entrepreneurs who have grown their businesses to 7 and 8 figures revenue. If you're in the mix of growing a bigger business, these stories are for you. Join us as we explore where the tough spots are, how to overcome them, and how to prepare yourself for the next portion of the climb. I'm your host, Julie Ellis. I'm an author, entrepreneur, and a growth and leadership coach who co-founded, grew, and exited an 8-figure business. This led me to exploring why some women achieve great things. And that led to my book, Big Gorgeous Goals. Let's explore the systems, processes, and people that help us grow our businesses to new heights. If you're interested in growing your business, this podcast will help. Now, let's get going. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Figure Eight. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Trena White. Trena is the co-founder and co-CEO of innovative book publishing firm Page Two, and they publish nonfiction books by leading experts. Page Two has several books they've published that have now sold over 1 million copies, and their books have been translated into dozens of languages around the world. Trena has been nominated for the RBC Women of Influence Trailblazer Award. And before launching Page Two, she was a publisher in the traditional publishing industry at one of Canada's largest independent book publisher and an editor at McClelland Stewart, which is now part of Penguin Random House. And she published my book. So I've known her for a long time. And I want to say welcome, Trena.
Hi, Julie. Thanks so much for having me. So good to see you.
Thank you. Oh, it's so good to see you. And I'm so glad that you agreed to come and chat about the publishing industry today, because I think that it's something that a lot of people don't know about. And it is a whole area and industry with so many experts in it. And when I published my book, I had so much to learn.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. Tell me about how you came to start Page Two.
Yeah, well, so my co-founder, Jesse Finkelstein, and I had both worked in traditional book publishing for many years each. And we actually were working in very senior leadership roles in what was then Canada's largest independent book publisher. And we weren't friends necessarily, but we really admired each other as colleagues. And then the company we were working for went through a hard financial time, entered creditor protection, and we both found ourselves unemployed. And we were really debating, what next? Do we leave this industry? Do we start something new? And we realized that there was a real opportunity to start a different kind of book publishing company, and that the model we had been working in didn't always serve entrepreneurial authors in the way that it could. So we decided to launch our own company. At the time, we called it a book publishing agency, which was new language we invented because there really wasn't a term for what we were doing. Now the common term is hybrid publishing. And it's basically a model where the publisher really partners with the author to produce the best possible book. And in our case, an important focus for us is publishing books that are in alignment with the author's goals for themselves and for their businesses. So we started out, it was just the two of us, and now 10 years later we have a team of 22 people, and we publish about 60 books a year all over the world. Some of them have been big bestsellers, like The Coaching Habit and a book called Exactly What to Say. But it started with us planning in my living room, basically, with my newborn baby in my lap.
I feel like babies are a time when we start to think about why are things done that way?
Yeah.
What could I do differently? Or we see things a little bit differently. There's something about newborn babies and having ideas.
Yeah, it's true. And it was also just a realization that there were a lot of people who were interested in the new world of self-publishing at the time. Self-publishing was kind of exploding a decade ago. um, and people who wanted to publish books their own way, to have a lot more creative control over it, a lot more say, to be heavily involved with the marketing and so on, the branding, but didn't want to just kind of get a book out there. They really wanted professional books that were well edited, well sold, well distributed, and all of those things. So we basically took what we knew from our previous publishing experience, as well as many of our relationships with printers and distributors and top-notch designers and so on, and kind of layered it into the self-publishing mindset, to create this new model and page two.
And in the beginning, a decade ago, you did a lot of explaining about what it was. You said you made up the terms and you went. And so there's a lot of like selling that you're
Yeah.
doing by way of explanation to people, trying to get them on board with a new idea.
There really was, trying to explain to people, and many of them were authors who, in some cases, they were authors who were with established publishing houses, and they were kind of interested in what we were doing and curious about it, but quite nervous about making that leap. And so we had to do a lot of education around the advantages of this type of publishing, having ownership of your IP, for instance, more involvement, higher earnings if the book performs well, those kinds of things. Um, but there was also a mindset that this type of publishing was it was a bit sort of taboo, or people really wanted the prestige of working with a long established traditional publisher. And one of the interesting things for us has been that over the last decade, that has changed significantly, where we now talk to people daily who have published with well-established companies, multinational publishing companies, and have decided for various reasons that they're ready to make the change and take the leap. So they already understand the various types of publishing. They understand what a company like Page Two does. In most cases, they've heard about us through friends of theirs, so they already understand what Page Two does. And they come to us really, really interested in working with us. So we now actually turn down about probably 90 to 95% of the projects that come to us. So it's not quite the sales process that it used to be.
Wow. That's amazing. That is amazing. And I think it's a reflection of the quality of work that your team does in the production of the works that you do publish.
Yeah, I would say we have a team that really sees themselves as craftspeople. They really, they are kind of masters in the craft of design or editing or whatever. And um, it's a very focused team that just puts intense care into everything that they do. And I think that's actually one of the things that has created our reputation and allowed us to grow in the way that we have and to attract the kinds of authors that we do.
Yeah. And so as the business has grown and have a bigger team and more people and all of the things that come with that, and there are many, many good things about growing a business, but there are also things that are challenges. And I know you were telling me that you hired a COO not too long ago. What has that been like in terms of making that shift to other people being leaders in the company outside of just you
Yeah.
and Jesse?
Yeah, it's sort of, when I look back over the last 11 years, I feel like we had a couple of major growth periods. And one was in maybe year three, when we were getting closer, you mentioned earlier, Julie, to the maybe $2 million mark. And that was a high growth period where we had to hire a whole bunch of people. And then over the last couple of years, there's been another shift where we were we had expanded enough that we really felt that it was too much for Jesse, my co-founder, and me to be as involved in leading each area of the company as it really needed. So what we did was we created a senior leadership team so that there's a director of each area of the company. So sales director, marketing, production, and so on. And then we created a COO position. And so those leaders all report to the COO. And what that's done is, first of all, Jesse and I think, were roadblocks previously in many ways because, we're just two people. We couldn't possibly dig in a meaningful way to develop new programs and new processes and things like that in the way that we would have liked. So now we have the people on the ground who really know their areas doing that. And then with our COO, Gabby, she's actually somebody who's been with us almost from the very beginning of our company. So she was our very first intern, and we've only had 2 interns. So the joke is our internship program has a really great track record. We were so small when we first had Gabby in as an intern that we used to share a desk in this tiny little office. But she's somebody who grew with us over the years and eventually became a project manager and then a production director and kind of worked her way up. And she's somebody Jesse and I just always felt had the leadership capability that we were looking for, kind of real understanding of how to develop people, a real passion for developing people, a real passion for systems, operations, in a way that neither of us particularly does. So putting her in this role has freed us up to zoom out a bit. We're still really focused on helping her and the leadership team at this stage to develop into their roles, but really it's allowing us to step out, think longer term. We're less about the day-to-day fires and things that need to be resolved, more about where are we going. We're thinking bigger picture, more strategically, and that's hugely exciting for us. I mean, I think that's what every entrepreneur aspires to, right? Is kind of getting a bit out of the day-to-day management of things. So we're focusing more on business development, partnerships, new services, and that kind of thing.
Which is exciting and fun, I'm
It's
sure.
it's exciting and fun, and then Gabby has just done incredible work to improve many of our systems and operations. The things that are totally critical to making a company function, replicating our process and things like that, but are just not exciting to many entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Well, and in some ways, it's been helpful, I'm sure, to have her grow up through the company.
Yeah,
So, first of all, because she has a deep knowledge, having worked her way through and seen
yeah,
how everything fits together and how it works, but also because the amount of trust that you and Jesse will have in letting go as she takes the role, because she doesn't have a trust bank account she needs to fill up before
yeah.
you feel comfortable.
That's right. I mean, we had been talking between the two of us, Jesse and me, for years, even before we initiated this conversation with Gabby about putting her into some very senior leadership role, because we just saw that potential in her. And then things got a bit delayed because she took a maternity leave and things. So um, I think it would have been very hard to hire somebody external and put them into the kind of role that she's in. She just understands intimately how the entire company works. She knows the whole history. She knows what's worked, what hasn't worked. She has all kinds of relationships that, she has the trust of the team, and including longtime other senior team members who were quite happy to suddenly be reporting to her because they trusted her and had her confidence. So, yeah, it would have been hard, I think, to do that, to bring somebody in from the outside. And then our industry is also so, it's kind of, it requires such specialized knowledge in a way, um, that this was absolutely the right way to go for us.
Yeah, and I mean overall the industry's small, in the like in terms of the pool of people you might want for a role like that.
It is small, and the industry, we're based in Vancouver, although we also have several people in Toronto and we sell our books globally. Um, the industry in Vancouver is small too, and it does make a difference having somebody on the ground who we can be with in person. We're a hybrid company now, but um, the pool of kind of local candidates would be even smaller.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is, I mean, those are some of the yeah, you're a hybrid company now. I think that's one of the sort of post-pandemic world challenges that a lot of us are facing. It's easy to be all in person, although it doesn't feel easy necessarily, but all in person or all virtual. At least it's an even way of managing and you can have a style. When you're hybrid, you have to be so careful about how communication flows and that the people in person don't know things. It's hard. It's a challenge for sure as a leader.
It it really is. And a funny thing, Julie, is that I myself was actually a hybrid worker before the pandemic. And in the fall of 2019, I was featured in a Globe and Mail article as a remote CEO because that was such a rare thing at the time. Because I live in a rural community, and then I would commute into our office a couple days a week. And back then, our company was small enough that some of my colleagues would set a laptop up in our office, and I would just zoom in and they would be kind of in the background. So it was sort of like I was there. And then, of course, since then, everybody's working from home part of the time. Our team is about double the size it was in 5 years ago. So those kinds of ideas are not practical anymore. And you do have to be really, really intentional about the flow of communication, making sure that everybody has the same information. And it's still a bit of a challenge, to be honest. I do find it to be, it's like there are more meetings than ever in a way because we're trying to fill the gap of those in-person conversations that we used to have. And even using tools like Slack and things don't quite replicate the kind of in-person creative interaction that we have.
Hmm. Well, and it is probably a combination because if you say, if we think about 5 years ago, we're really talking about the period sort of just before the
Hmm.
pandemic to now. So there's been so much change.
Hmm.
But I think that, so there's this workplace change where you've gone from, to truly hybrid, from mostly in person to a truly hybrid environment, and also doubled your team. So there's like all these different forces from those two things that have kind of come together because once teams get up to a certain size, there's more HR, there's more human resources that's required. People have more questions.
Yeah.
You need more policies. You need more scaffolding and structure.
Yes, you absolutely do, which was another reason for creating this COO position. And we also hired an external, sort of a fractional HR director, which has been incredibly helpful. She's helped us level up, our HR policies of all sorts, from employment agreements to, leave policies, all kinds of things. That's been really helpful. And again, if Jesse and I were to be doing all of this, just the two of us, it would just be way too much, given that we also need to be focused on business development.
Yes. And so now you've got the freedom to focus on those things.
Yeah, that's right.
And how would you say that's changed your job?
I would say it's one of the things that's been incredible is I feel it's made my job more creative, again. So, really to be able to think about new opportunities in a creative way, to get out of the weeds, really, for the team to have other people to go to with all of their questions. That's made a big difference. I feel much happier personally, so I feel, it's increased my satisfaction as an entrepreneur significantly. And then it's also just allowed us to do more. So if I look back, even at the last year of what we've accomplished as a team, it's really quite incredible. And there's just no way we could have done this without our leadership team.
Right. I think that's so interesting because I do think there's this, we all go in bright and shiny with our eyes sparkling as we start businesses because we have these great ideas or we see a need. But then is this like messy middle part where you're like, am I really good at this? How did this become part of my job?
Mm-hmm.
Do I really want this? Like,
Mm-hmm.
do I want all these people reporting to me or all of these operation and systems
Yeah.
things or, whatever it is that isn't kind of in our true gifts that we brought to the
Mm-hmm.
table. And so it's really encouraging to hear that you've gotten back to that.
It is. It's really, really incredible. And, I remember when we first launched Page Two, we set up this sort of informal advisory board. And one of the people on that board said to us, the thing you need to keep in mind as you grow your company is you need to document everything. You need to really establish your process and your systems, because that's what someone ultimately will want to buy. And that's what's going to help you scale your company efficiently. And I remember at the time thinking, I didn't really know what she meant.
Yep.
And now I do. And let me tell you, it's so much harder to go back and kind of reverse engineer, in a way. If we had really slowed down and documented everything we did along the way, it would have made the growth, I think, easier in some ways. Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's one of those interesting things where I know we had a lot of conversations at Maples Labels as it was growing about, so this process or this system isn't scaling with us anymore. We're out of band, it's reached the limit.
Yeah.
So, how far do we go in terms of like, you have this thing where you want the heavy hammer, like you want something that will do it all, but in truth, you be equally unhappy with that because it's not going to do the job for you either. Like it is this process of how do you get, 3 or 5 more years out, and then, and hopefully you can do things with enough longevity to get to those next milestones without breaking them. But I think it's hard because you do have this, you want everything, but really the business can't handle everything at that point. So you've
Yeah.
got to also figure out how to integrate, bite off the right size pieces, so to speak.
It's true, and you're right. I mean, it is also a process of constantly reevaluating. So what's broken, what no longer makes sense given the size we're at now, where we can't just, and we're not all in the same room, so we can't just lean over and say, "Hey, this thing is happening," right? How do you, build the scaffolding, as you say, to grow with the company? That's a real challenge. And thankfully other people at page two have a head have a head for it.
That is, and it is great because, yeah, when you get stuck doing work that doesn't like isn't in your kind of zone of genius, it's very draining and very hard to be excited about the rest of the work.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Jesse and I entered this year ready to start doing some long-term business planning, thinking about where are we going next? What are the new products or services that we want to be offering? And it's just so invigorating to be thinking that way. It's almost like a second chance at a startup phase in a way. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and thinking about, yeah, what other things could you bring to help the people the authors that you work with,
exactly.
sell more books and build bigger businesses themselves, right? Because it is like
Yeah.
this, it's part of that ecosystem, right? The authors, as you grow, you can take on authors that have bigger profiles, and in return, they can build even bigger profiles, and
Yeah.
everybody can kind of grow and blossom together, which I think is a really nice part about your business and what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. And so that's the question we're asking ourselves and authors too. What is it that you really need from us? What more can we be doing to help you? What are the challenges for you with publishing your book? Whereas, in our early days, we were asking people we knew kind of out in the world, what would you be looking for in a book publisher? Now we have this amazing pool of people to draw on. And because we publish so many business books and also self-help books, we have this incredible brain trust of authors who really understand entrepreneurship, culture, all of these things that are so important, leadership. And so we get the most insightful input from them. And that's what we're using to shape the next phase of the company.
Which I think is a really, having those real relationships with the people that are you're working with, I think is a real rarity today in business in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe so. There are authors, there are clients, but I think it's part of our process and the way hybrid publishing ideally works. We see our job as facilitating an exchange of information between us and our authors. So they're bringing an understanding of their audience and their material and their IP. We're bringing an understanding of book publishing, and we merge those things to make the best possible book. But that merging can happen in all kinds of other ways. I mean, I have many authors I've built really quite close relationships with, and it is, there's something about the length of the work we do with an author. It's usually 12 to 18 months we're working with them. The fact that the book is their baby and it's like it has so much
Yeah.
importance to them and their companies. It's a very personal kind of process, and does lead to some quite authentic relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I think there's a vulnerability to it as you
Hmm.
launch your ideas out into the world in such a formal kind of way.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of fears and anxieties that come along with that process. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I think it's exciting. I mean, it feels like you're positioned now to grow in a different way than you
Hmm.
have in the past, which was, sort of like volume of books and revenue. And now instead of it sort of being in a vertical, you're starting to look at other
That's
ways
right.
to make bigger projects from some of the things you are already working on.
That's exactly it. I mean, there are certain things every author wants and needs when they launch their book. they all need support with social media, and they need, there's various things. And so what we're trying to do now is to bring as many supports as possible to each author to make it easy for them, so that we can just integrate the kind of support that they need to launch their book effectively. The book publishing is our core expertise, but we're building partnerships with a number of people to help us go deeper with each author.
Which is great, because I think I said to you when we were chatting before we recorded this, it's at the start line, right? The day your book comes out, and your book birthday is a start line of a whole other part of being an author, which
That's
is
right.
different than the writing and the editing and the thinking and the working to get all of those pieces right. The
Mhm.
actual living, breathing thing comes into the world, and you have to sell it and nurture it, and
Mhm.
all of the things that come with that is a very different part of the process, but equally as rigorous.
Absolutely. And it used to be in the book publishing industry that people would think of the book launch phase as maybe 6 weeks or a month or a couple of months. Now we coach our authors to think of the book launch period as a year to 2 years. It's really, how are you going to keep getting that book in front of people? How are you going to bake it into your business, so that your corporate clients are buying it in bulk, for instance, and everyone you deliver a keynote to is getting a copy? Those kinds of long-term plays can really keep the book's momentum going.
Yes, and certainly people don't want to come out with a new book every year, so
No.
that would be impossible nearly. So you do want to continue to see life out of the things that you create.
Yeah,
When you're on this
exactly.
side as the entrepreneur who's trying to put all your thoughts into something, you want something that will last as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it is so interesting. I think even, you know, just I mean a decade ago, who would have thought that Amazon would end up in being like such a huge force in book selling, and like so, and I imagine it's with the pace of change these days, it's going to continue to evolve, how people consume books and how they're sold and what,
Yeah. Yeah, it's an industry that's constantly changing. I mean, it's uh, for people who come from sort of the digital marketing space, they sometimes find our industry kind of archaic in many ways, but it is constantly evolving. Audiobooks, for instance, now have really exploded. A lot of people prefer to listen to their books rather than to actually read them. Print on demand is now a really critical part of book publishing. To sell our books in Australia, in fact, most of our books there are now printed through print on demand, because it's just exponentially faster to get the books into the market than to actually ship books on a
and books
boat.
are big and heavy,
From
relatively
Yeah.
speaking, right? Mhm.
Yeah, so there's just new technology is changing the industry all the time and creating various efficiencies. Um, and some of these digital changes are helpful from a sustainability perspective as well. Print on demand is kind of lower waste, um, lower transportation emissions. So yeah, there's still a lot of change happening, and I'm sure will continue to be. But people are reading still.
Oh, interesting. Well, it'll be exciting, I think, to see where you can take page two in the next decade.
Thanks, Julie.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. It's authors like you who, are so generous with us and have really helped us to get where we are.
Good. Well, I'm so glad that we worked together, because it was a really great experience.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today. Take care. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you won't miss any episodes. Figure 8 isn't just a podcast. It's a way of seeing the big, gorgeous goals of women entrepreneurs coming to life. If you're interested in learning more, you can find my book, Big Gorgeous Goals, on Amazon anywhere you might live. For more about my growth and leadership training programs, visit www.julieellis.ca to see how we might work together. Read my blog or sign up to get your free diagnostic. Are you ready for growth? Once again, that's www.julieellis.ca. When we work together, we all win. See you again soon for another episode of Figure 8.